Banri Tada is a new student studying law in Tokyo. He goes to the famous Tokyo University, but unfortunately he does not know anyone there. Since he arrives late for his entrance ceremony, he has no idea where to go and decides to follow two other students instead. This leads him to meet Mitsuo Yanagisa, who is another first-year student, and they quickly become friends. Afterwards, Mitsuo is approached by a pretty girl who gives Mitsuo a bunch of roses, but then unexpectedly hits him before leaving. The girl is Koko Kaga, who is actually Mitsuo's childhood friend and his fiancée. But Mitsuo doesn't have feelings for her, so he ran away from the engagement. Later, Banri and Mitsuo find out that Koko is also a student at their university, which shocks Mitsuo. Banri gets to know Koko in one of their classes, and he begins to have feelings for her. After class, Banri makes friends with Chinami Oka, another new student, and Linda, who's in the second year and part of a club that studies Japanese festivals. Later on his way home, Banri runs into Koko again. She borrows his phone to find Mitsuo's location. But when she returns the phone, Banri sees a hospital's number, and it triggers a memory of a time when he was on a bridge and got hit by a motorcycle. One day Banri has a strange dream where he's running away from a hospital, but he can't remember much about it when he wakes up. When he gets to the university gate, he meets Koko, who's waiting for Mitsuo. They chat, and Banri notices that Koko seems really lonely without Mitsuo. Later that night, Banri tells Mitsuo about Koko, but Mitsuo thinks Koko is just pretending to be lonely to get Banri to help her find him. To cheer things up, Mitsuo invites Banri to a party thrown by the film club, which Chinami convinced him to join. But the party gets crashed by the tea club, and they pull Banri into their party. There, he meets a new friend named Takaya Sato, who is known throughout university by the nickname Nijijin. The next day, Banri sees that Koko still hasn't made any friends. He encourages her to join a club so she can meet other students. Meanwhile, another student overhears them and invites them to a cafe to learn about her club. They end up talking until it gets dark, and she invites them on a club trip to see if they'd like to join. Banri still wants to help Koko, so he decides to go with her when she agrees to go on the club trip. On the day of the planned club trip, Banri meets up with Koko and Nijijin, who's also been invited. When the club members come to pick them up, Banri starts to get suspicious. He notices that they all have the same pendant, and things get even weirder when they take the group to a far-off place. Turns out, the club is actually a cult, and they want Banri's group to join them. Banri talks to them and tells them that he had an accident after high school, and he can't remember anything from before college. He thinks they can help him remember. The cult agrees to let the others go, and they leave. Koko decides to stay with Banri, and they hide in the woods. While hiding, Banri and Koko open up to each other. Koko admits that she's actually a nice person, and only acts stuck up around Mitsuo because she likes him. She also confesses that she used her friendship with Banri to get closer to Mitsuo. Banri, on the other hand, tells Koko that his story about amnesia is true. He feels like his family and friends want his old self to come back and make his current self disappear. He understands their feelings, but he doesn't want to lose who he is now. When they hear the cult members searching for them, Banri and Koko run deeper into the woods and bump into Linda, a member of the school club that studies Japanese festivals. After Linda finds them, she explains that she was on a retreat with the festival club and takes Banri and Koko to their campsite. When they return, Nijijin, Mitsuo, and Chinami are relieved to see them safe. Later, Banri, Mitsuo, and Chinami gather to chat, but Koko interrupts and starts criticizing and belittling Chinami since she notices Chinami and Mitsuo seem close. This upsets Mitsuo, and he leaves with Chinami, leaving Banri to comfort a regretful Koko. After class, Banri and Koko run into Linda again, who invites them to join the festival club's dance rehearsals. Banri decides to join, and Koko thinks about it. Later that night, Mitsuo tells Banri that he's going to talk things out with Koko because he wants to be with Chinami. The next day, Mitsuo rejects Koko's affection in front of Banri, saying that he only sees her as a childhood friend, even though he treasures their past. Koko gets really upset and tells him to forget their history, which drives Mitsuo away. She then says hurtful things to Banri, but quickly realizes she's hurting him and keeps apologizing. A few hours later, a girl named Nana invites Koko and Banri to a concert. Koko goes to let off steam but gets kicked out after going on stage. She spends the night at Banri's place. Koko admits she needs him, and Banri confesses his love for her. After she leaves, she texts Banri, encouraging him to remember his lost memories. This motivates him to go back to his home in Shizuoka, where he finds a scrapbook with pictures of himself and Linda from high school. After finding the photo of him and Linda, Banri rushes to the bridge where the accident happened, but he can't remember anything more. The spirit of his 18-year-old self, Banri Tada, watches him. This spirit explains that the fall made his 18-year-old spirit, along with all his memories, leave his body, but the current Banri can't see or hear him. When Banri gets back to school, he meets Koko. She gives him a mirror that matches hers to celebrate their friendship. The next day, Bonri and Mitsuo bump into Koko, who acts really cheerful and dramatic about her friendship with Bonri. Linda, who's helping Koko with class registration, joins them and meets Mitsuo, but she doesn't mention knowing Bonri from before. At their first dance rehearsal, Koko shows she can't dance, and it makes her sad. She cries, and after calming down, she apologizes to Bonri for her behavior. She confesses that she's still hurting from being dumped by Mitsuo. Bonri reassures her and reminds her of their friendship by using the mirror she gave him. That night, Bonri remembers something from when he escaped the hospital. He saw a flashing light from his window, and when he went to check, he found Linda. They talked, and she's the one who inspired him to come to Tokyo. Bonri wonders why Linda never mentioned any of this to him, and the spirit of his younger self wishes he could tell the current Bonri how important Linda was to him. In a flashback, Bonri tells Linda that he loves her, and she agrees to give him her answer the next night on the bridge where Bonri had his accident. Koko notices that Bonri acts strangely around Linda, but when she asks him about it, he says everything's fine. Chinami finds Bonri and invites him and Koko to a party, but Koko doesn't want to go because she doesn't like Chinami. However, Chinami likes Koko, and explains this to Bonri. Bonri talks Koko into going to the party with him, Mitsuo, and Nijijin. At the party, Koko and Mitsuo argue about Chinami. Mitsuo ends up confessing to Chinami, but she turns him down. On their way home, Bonri decides to end his friendship with Koko because he can't handle her ongoing crush on Mitsuo. Despite Koko's objections, he leaves her. The next day, Linda notices the tension between Bonri and Koko. When she asks about it, Bonri confronts Linda about not telling him that they knew each other before. Linda explains that she didn't want to confuse him or push him away. She also feels guilty for not getting to the bridge in time to prevent Bonri's accident. Later, Koko meets up with Bonri to find out what happened. He starts running away because he realizes that Linda might have liked him back in the day, and how that could have changed things. Before he can wonder if having the same accident would let him redo things, Koko catches up to him and tells him not to leave her. She confesses that she loves him. Koko confesses her love to Bonri, but before he can respond, Koko gets arrested for stealing the bike she used to catch up to him. At the police station, they clear Koko of the charges. She explains why she confessed suddenly, and Bonri tells her he loves her too, and they become an official couple. The next day, Koko openly shows her love for Bonri as they walk to school. Nijijin can't believe it, and Mitsuo, who dyed his hair blonde because he's sad about getting rejected, is mildly surprised. When Chinami comes to greet them, Mitsuo runs away. Chinami says he's been avoiding her, and that she turned him down because he confessed at a party. Linda shows up, and Bonri runs off, admitting he's been avoiding her since their last talk, even though she keeps trying to talk to him. As time goes by, Bonri and Koko enjoy being a couple, but Bonri keeps ignoring Linda, which makes her sad and catches Nana's attention. One day, Bonri has to go back to his apartment because of a plumbing issue. When he gets there, he meets Nana again, who reveals she's his neighbor and faked the plumbing issue to get him to talk to Linda. In Bonri's apartment, he apologizes for his behavior and they rekindle their friendship. Just then, Bonri gets a call from Koko, who's worried about Mitsuo and thinks he might be in trouble. In a flashback, Bonri overhears Linda saying she doesn't like him, so he ignores her for a few days. Then she apologizes, saying she didn't mean what she said. Bonri forgives her, and the spirit of Bonri remembers that this was when things changed between them. He started wondering if Linda did like him. Meanwhile, in the present day, Bonri gets a call from Koko, and goes to check on Mitsuo, who's feeling down because he told Chinami to stay away from him due to rumors that she rejected him. To cheer Mitsuo up, Bonri, Nijijin, and Koko take him to an amusement park. Though when Chinami calls, Koko invites her to help mend things between her and Mitsuo. Koko and Bonri meet Chinami at the station. After some teasing between Koko and Chinami, they get along, and the group spends the whole day at the park. Mitsuo and Chinami make up. Later, they all spend the night at Bonri's apartment. While everyone's asleep, Bonri texts Linda, who's next door. They meet on the balcony and talk about their past relationship. Bonri asks Linda about her feelings for him back then, and she says she only saw him as a friend. Bonri seems to accept it, but then he suddenly shouts that he wants to go back to that time, surprising both of them. Linda brushes it off and goes back inside. But the spirit of Bonri still loves Linda and wants to be with her, even though he knows he can't leave the current Bonri without disappearing. Meanwhile, Koko gets sick and misses several days of school. When she finally comes back, Bonri notices she's sad, but she denies it. Eventually, she breaks down in tears and tells Bonri she's afraid he might leave her someday. Bonri comforts her, promising he won't leave, and they share their first kiss. The spirit of Bonri, who is watching, thinks about a similar situation he had with Linda. In a flashback to their third year in high school, Linda tells Bonri that she found out her brother's fiancé was having an affair. She asks Bonri for help in exposing it. They take photos of the affair, but Linda changes her mind and deletes the pictures. Instead, she talks to her brother's fiancé, and decides to keep the secret but warns her not to do it again. Bonri is really upset about Linda's decision, but apologizes when he sees how troubled she is by her own deceit. Bonri comforts her, saying she's not alone and he'll share the burden of her secret. But he can't reassure her when she asks him to. In the present, Bonri and Linda meet and talk. Bonri mentions that Coco is sick again, and Linda talks about her family and brother. When Bonri shows he doesn't remember her having a brother, Linda gets sad and leaves. But before she goes, she uses the words Bonri used to comfort her in the past to encourage him to be there for Coco. The spirit of Bonri, who saw all of this, regrets not confessing his true feelings to Linda when she sought reassurance from him. He thinks it's too late for them. However, the next morning, the spirit of Bonri wakes up inside his physical body. Ghost Bonri wakes up in his body and feels the need to see Linda. He slips and falls, hitting his chin on the floor, and he turns back into new Bonri. He sees in the mirror that Coco gave him that he's cut his chin. Even though it's not a serious injury, Bonri feels sick. He also notices that the hidden picture of Linda and himself is gone. Bonri tries to go to the hospital by himself, but Nana finds him and takes him there. On their way home, Bonri tells Nana that he had the wrong idea about her, and that she's actually really nice. Back home, Nana hands him over to Linda, who accuses her of hurting Bonri. Nana explains she only helped him and leaves them alone. Linda takes care of Bonri for a while, giving him water and medicine, and Bonri thinks about his mixed feelings for Linda and Coco. Later, Coco shows up with a bunch of roses and pretends to accuse Bonri of cheating because he's alone with Linda. Bonri and Linda are surprised until Coco reveals she's joking, and throws the roses aside. Mitsuo arrives and playfully argues over who caught the bouquet, and will get married first. Coco assures everyone that she was just kidding and knows Bonri would never cheat on her. She goes a bit overboard on the subject and gets scolded by Linda. Coco scolds Bonri for not telling her that Nana lives next door but forgives him anyway. She thanks Linda for taking care of Bonri, but Mitsuo thinks she's not being honest about her true feelings. They start to argue, but Linda stops them for Bonri's sake. Coco admits that she got a little jealous when she heard another woman took care of him before she could. But Linda admits that Nana looked after him first. Later, everyone talks about their plans for summer vacation, and they decide to go to the beach together. And later that night, Bonri wakes up and finds Coco still there watching over him. Coco apologizes for not taking good care of him and for making a fuss when he wasn't feeling well. She feels down and says she could never be a good girlfriend. Bonri hugs her and asks if she's completely over her cold. She assures him that she couldn't have come to see him if she weren't better. She admits that she wanted to go to the beach only with him, and asks if he'll take her when he's better. She says it doesn't have to be Paris, referring to her ideal first-time location. Bonri promises to take her when summer vacation comes. Bonri and Coco are on the train, chatting about Coco's new festival club nickname, Robo Girl, because of her robot-like dancing. They're excited about the Awa Dance Festival and their upcoming beach trip. Bonri worries that Coco might be the one who took the photo of him and Linda from his apartment. They meet up with the other festival club members and discuss the festival preparations. Later, Bonri talks to some upperclassmen and asks for advice about his beach trip with Coco. They suggest that a simple day trip by train might not be enough for a classy girl like Coco, and advise him to get a job to make some money. Coco tells Bonri she doesn't want him to get a job because it would mean they won't see each other as much. She offers to pay for both of them on their trip, saying she wants to spend as much time with him as possible. She admits she worries about what he's doing when they're apart and acknowledges her own quirks. Coco wishes she could shrink him down and carry him in her bag for safety. Meanwhile, Tsunami arrives and says hello, mentioning that she's on her way to her part-time job. She tells Bonri that her employer is hiring more people, so they go with her to the upscale cafe where she works. But Coco insists Bonri shouldn't work there. Later, Bonri visits Nana to repay her for cab fare and brings her cookies. Nana offers him a job as a waiter at a weekend party and insists he brings Mitsuo along. Mitsuo is reluctant until they're approached by the tea club with a dubious job offer. On the night of the party, Bonri tells Mitsuo he can't hang out with Coco because he needs to work on a report. At the party, Bonri ends up dressed as a maid, and Mitsuo agrees to wear just a flesh-colored Speedo for extra money. Bonri also sees Linda working as a devil girl at the party. Coco gets worried and tries to contact Bonri, but he doesn't have his phone at the party. Meanwhile, it was secretly her that had the photo of Bonri and Linda, while Bonri is working as a waiter at the party along with Nana, Mitsuo, and Linda. Coco sends more texts to him but gets worried when he doesn't reply. Some guests spot Bonri and Linda together and want to take their picture. They get carried away and pose in a flirty way just as Coco arrives. She's furious and throws a drink in Bonri's face and slaps him. Linda tries to apologize, but Nana stops her, and Bonri takes Coco to a fitting room. He can't talk much because he's still working, so he gives Coco the key to his place and tells her to wait for him there. Coco leaves, and Bonri goes back to work but is worried about their relationship. After the party, they get paid, and Bonri tells Mitsuo that his salary might not be very useful. On his way home, Bonri checks his phone and realizes that Coco has been texting him all day. He rushes home to find Coco waiting in the dark apartment. They apologize to each other, and Coco returns the photo of Bonri and Linda, which surprises him. Bonri admits that he used to be in love with Linda, and that sometimes he still feels his old feelings for her. Coco hugs him and says all she wants is for Bonri not to remember the past. They understand each other, and the couple reconciles. The next morning, Bonri tells Linda that he wants to talk to her. By the river, he asks if she loved the old Bonri, and she says she only saw him as a friend. Bonri tries to tear the picture of them together, with the ghost of the old Bonri disagreeing. He drops the picture, and Linda picks it up. Bonri stands up and tells her they should pretend to be strangers because he wants to break ties with the past. Linda understands that Coco is bothered by her being part of Bonri's past life, and says they're doing the right thing. She then tears the picture into pieces, surprising Bonri. The next morning, Coco and Bonri take a picture together, creating new memories just for the two of them. And this is all for this video. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next one.